I know now that there are certain emotional bases of points that we have to stand in together with that audience. And one of the places where we need to stand is in outrage over the crime that people do. One of the things that fuels the death penalty is the outrage that's felt when people do these terrible crimes. And that outrage is legitimate. It comes out of moral sensibility. If we get callous, we're not outraged over things anymore. And outrage over the death of innocent people is one of those places I know as the audience and I, as I'm bringing them through this journey with me, that will be one of the places that we will stand together. Another will be just the whole unfolding for me, writing a letter to somebody, images I had of death row inmates that they're in the back of my mind, you know, will we be able to have a normal conversation? Are they like monsters, or are they really human? And taking them into death row and letting them meet a death row person and see that they are in fact a human being. That's going to be an important part of the journey. Going over to the murder victims' families and going down that road with them, going with murder victims' families that choose forgiveness and reconciliation, and those that choose vengeance. Those who in their very vulnerable state of being hurt and angry and have the state approach them, would you like to see this person executed? And they go, yeah, fry him, and we want to be there. Understanding that too. But then another place is with the guards and the people who have to carry out the execution. Few people even think of this part, but in order for us to execute people in any state, there are going to be about 12 men who are hired to do this. And what about them? And when I wrote the book, Dead Man Walking, I wrote everybody's story and trying to approach each of them from compassion, not looking down on anybody or saying, how could you do this? Don't you realize the hypocrisy when you say, I'm only doing my job, you're killing people? But really appreciating the pain they're in and the conflict. They got a wife and kids. They would tell me this. The guards would pull me aside and tell me this. And so I know that we're going to go to all these places, the death row, and their family, the unseen victim's family, of course, is the family behind the person who's going to be executed. Their funeral is going to be just as real. The grief of that mother is going to be just as real. And then the murder victims' families, and then the guards, and all along the way to give people information. I know they don't know how the death penalty works in this country. They really don't know. They believe the political rhetoric that they hear. Oh yeah, it's only going to be reserved for those who do the most terrible, heinous crimes. That's who the death penalty's for. And we have over 3,500 people in this country. And California has the largest death row population in the whole United States, over 500 people in this state. And people think, oh yeah, those are the people chosen because they did the most horrible crime. And then when you start looking at it, you see what a selective process it is. Beginning on who the victim was and who cared. Was the victim white, or was the victim a person of color? Very often in this country, when victims of color are killed, there's barely a shrug of the shoulders. There's not a vigorous prosecution. And you begin to see how race plays a part in the selectivity. You begin to see that district attorneys have great discretion. Will we go for murder 1, drop it down to murder 2, put it down to manslaughter, plea bargain the whole thing, not go to trial? Who was the victim and who cares? And how much media attention did it get? How much pressure's on us to get somebody? And then we begin to find out that innocent people are in there along with the guilty. And it happens because virtually all the people chosen for death are poor. And if you're poor, you're never going to have a Johnny Cochran defense team on your side. It's going to be a wash when you go into the court. You begin to learn all these things and that we have an alternative. And I shingle in or weave in information into the stories as we make our way through this journey. And that we have an alternative in the United States, as most other countries, modern societies have incarceration as a way of incapacitating dangerous people. And part of the education to people too is they say, oh, if we don't execute them though, life doesn't mean life. They're going to get out in a few years and they're going to kill again. And educating people. Over the last 10 years, state legislatures all over this country have tightened up sentencing for first-degree felony murder, and they are not getting out of prison after a few short years, so that we can be safe without imitating the crime, without imitating the killing.